Hey folks, so we will be writing about fiction in this class, and the first thing to tell you about fiction is that it is a made-up story, and sometimes people find that hard to believe. They think that the author is writing about his or her life, and that is absolutely okay. It probably is sort of true, but we sort of bring down the curtain between the writer and the novel or the short story or the prose piece, and we just say these things are not related. The author and the work are separate. So that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about what to write about. You don't want to write about how it is true or not true. It is a string of lies that should feel true. That's what fiction is. Okay, so the one thing to really not write about when you're writing about fiction is the plot. Unless the story is so absolutely confusing that you feel like you need to string it together for us. But basically listing what happened. He went to the store, and then he ran into his best friend, and then they got in a car and went to Vegas, and then they got drunk and they disappeared into a vortex of pain and despair for 2 months, and then we don't want to hear it. We are really not interested in what happened, because the good news is that probably we have read the book too that you are writing about. So I want you to think about not writing about plot unless it's unclear. Things to write about, though, things that you really want to think about when you're reading, so that when you get to the writing stage, you've already kind of got an idea. The first thing is character, and I got it right here in this list here, in this handy handout. If I can, here we go, I'm going to move it for you. Characters. Okay. Characters, how do they change? Characters typically change. Why do they change? Are they forced to by the environment? Are they forced to by other characters? What makes them change? Do they have an internal epiphany? Do they suddenly see the error of their ways? Did their mother beat them over the head with a club? What made them change? What is the arc of their change? Now, if they don't change, why? It's really weird when characters don't change. There's a very famous short story novella called Bartleby the Scrivener by Herman Melville, and there's a character in there called Bartleby the Scrivener, surprising, and that guy does not change. He's so annoying, and I hate that story. But the point is that Bartleby doesn't change, and you could ask why. What is his point in this story? Another thing to write about here on the handout as well is theme. What are the big ticket nuggets of meaning in this piece? Love, mother-daughter relationships, father-son relationships, father-daughter relationships, loss, grief, hope, despair, God, faith, all of these huge, big ticket items. How is the writer dealing with them? What's the most prevalent? How do you see this? Sometimes a character can represent a theme. So Bartleby, in all his intractability, sitting there not moving, is he a symbol? Is he symbolizing the theme of the past? Perhaps. Language. Every writer uses specific language skills to convey meaning. Some writers are very lyrical. They have beautiful language. Some writers use a lot of imagery, symbols. Some writers are really focused on voice. You can hear and see their characters through the voice. Tone, the diction, the choice of the words, the syntax, the order of the words. You can write a paper about how a writer uses language. So, for instance, an example I have used before while teaching is in The Shipping News by Annie Proulx, Proulx, believe it or not. The first parts of the book, first few chapters, are really in fragments, sentence fragments. And so it was kind of annoying, because as an English teacher, I was like, why are all these damn fragments here in this book? But the use of the sentence fragment reflects reflected the main character's fragmented situation. So the language, the way the writer used the language is mirrored in the character. So that all can really work. So you might find something like that. You might find an overabundance of a use of a color or of a particular flora or fauna in the setting that reflects something that's going on in the story. The setting. I mentioned flora and fauna, but where is this story set? Setting isn't accidental. Setting is on purpose. I'm going to set this story in New York City because all this crazy stuff is going to happen in the story, and it can only happen here. What does it mean? Does setting tie into theme? Does setting tie into character? Does the language reflect the setting, which reflects the character? So all of this is all tied in. And I think it's all really very useful to think about when you're writing about fiction. So you need to form an opinion. So you could say something to the effect of the author's use of setting contrasts with the very careful depiction of the character. So let's say the setting is a hurricane. Let's say it's a terrible hurricane like the ones we've been having this year. But the characters are very controlled and tight. So the setting is used in opposition to the character. That's your opinion. That's something you've read. That's something you could write about. But I want the big takeaway here is that I do not want you writing about the plot or the what happened. I want you to write about the book in terms of how the writer does something with character, theme, language, setting, etc. How does the writer use these things to create the story that flows? Okay, good luck with your papers.